how much is too much, like after school, weekends and all that kind of stuff for kids? Because these days you can be involved in a lot of things.
Yeah.
What are some of the signs that you think that a child is overscheduled?
Yeah. Oh, this is one of my favourite topics, partly because I'm a theatre mum, I'm a hip-hop mum.
You're a hip-hop mum?
I don't do hip-hop.
Yeah.
Let's
Pop
just
and
clarify.
lock, Sheridan.
I am picking up what you're putting down.
Come on. But my daughter is about to fly to LA
Whoa!
and represent New Zealand for the World of Dance.
Come on now. Oh, you are a hip-hop mum.
I am. But I was driving here thinking about the hours that I have spent in my car.
Yep.
And I'm big on let's support our kids, what they're passionate about. But I think there has to be a limit. And Brené Brown, who I love to listen to,
Yes.
is so good. She talks about when we make these decisions as a family, we almost want to sit down together and everybody is in the room deciding what we're saying yes to. And that's because the kid that wants to go to World of Dance in July is going to have 3 practices a week that finish at 10 o'clock at night. And the parents really need to be on board. Are we saying yes to this? Because who's going to be the Uber driver?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's good. You're taking into consideration kind of the wider effect. And then is that when you say you sit down and talk about, like, are we doing this? Because obviously, you know, you as the cab driver has to play a big part in all this kind of stuff. You know, I always felt sorry for the water polo kids who are always up at like 5 a.m. before school in the
or
pool.
Swimming or wakaama.
Yeah, that kind of thing, you know. But then there's the parents too who are going along with it. Do you include all the other siblings in it too? And like your sit down conversations around, you know, are we saying yes to that? Because you've got to manage everybody else's wants and needs too if there's multiple kids.
Absolutely. And I think parents that have multiple kids and say they've got a 6-year-old who loves swimming twice a week, that means you're taking the 4-year-old and the 2-year-old along. So let's include them because we are actually then dragging lots of kids around. If we go back to your question around when is it too much, I think when we're seeing kids really overwhelmed, just, you know, tantrums at the drop of a hat. One of the first things I like to encourage parents to think about is, are you overscheduling? Are you doing too much after school?
Is there a trap that families fall into with the overscheduling around wanting their kids to be involved, right? Where did you know, you want your kids to be spending time doing extracurricular curricular activities, and it's a good way to stay away from devices as well. But what's the balance? Where do you find the balance in not having them play rugby, not having them do wakaama at the same time, not having them do rugby league as well?
So many things come into play because I think, you know, I was doing a parenting talk last night at Kristen School up in Albany, and I was talking about how, you know, different personalities of kids, some are going to want to sign up to everything, and that's one form of a problem. And then there's the other kids that you cannot get them out the door. And I think somewhere there is a balance. Like, we do want to encourage our kids to be involved in things that they like and they can expand their talents in. But also, when is it too much? And, you know, that kid that ticks every extracurricular thing that's in my house right now.
Trying to work out that whole thing with families is tough for a lot of people, right? And tough for parents when they have to say no. Like, you can't do that as well.
Yeah.
How do you break that news to a kid where you're like, no, you're already doing 2 sports?
Yeah.
And if they're really like gifted or talented at something, but you're like, there's just not capacity or room, so you can't. Like, how do you have that conversation?
Well, I think part of it is being brave enough to have the conversation. And then it's about kind of expecting the pushback, expecting the disappointment and not being undone by it. I'm often in my coaching room speaking to parents a lot about, you know, almost want to lead in with knowing they're going to be disappointed but holding space for it. But, you know, as their sturdy leaders, we are the ones that get to decide what is enough. And I think it's an important thing to think about.
Bjorn made a really good point about siblings.
Yeah.
And when you've got somebody who's very active and proactive, sometimes the younger siblings get dragged along to all of that. We started this conversation at the top by saying you make it a group discussion.
Yes.
Because there is an impact on the other siblings if you do have a family.
Yeah.
What about me? You know, what is that? How does that look like for those younger children? And you know, because your time you want to, I'm a parent as well with the 3 kids, and I'm trying to divide my time, and I'm trying not to look like I'm favoring one child's activities over the other child's activities. So that's an important part of the process.
Yeah, that is where that that kind of group decision, what are we saying yes to, is so important. The other thing I would say is who's in your village. So I was the mum of 4. I had the soccer mum's car, and I was always strategically making friends with other people in the rugby team and basketball. Like, who can we get alongside to help with the ride to basketball so that you're not dragging 2 younger kids out? I think all of these things come into play when we're thinking about what we say yes to. I often talk about as well, at the end of a term, review it. How did it go? Do we have energy? My daughter did 3 theatre shows, I think it was last year or the year before. I just about lost it. I might as well have had the Uber neon sign on my car. And it was like, one more trip to ALT Centre is going to do my head in.
How did she cope with that, though?
She was fine.
Really?
It was me.
Yeah.
And this is what I mean. Like, sometimes our kids have capacity and they love it. And let's do that, but not at the expense of, am I actually going to lose the plot myself?
Yeah. What about forcing kids to finish something they signed up to? Do you reckon that's good or bad?
I think let's reframe the forcing part.
Nah, let's just call it that.
I'm a big believer in our family, we finish something that we start. So I'm a big believer in, if we are saying yes to something, we see it through as much as possible, unless there's something that you think is unsafe.
What about using kind of, I don't know how to describe it, not a reward system, but, if they're like, I really want to do this, and saying, you can do that if...
Yeah.
Tick this, that gets done to this level, or whatever it is, like having conditions around it, being like, your grades have to be at this point, or whatever it is, depending on the age of the kid, this would be very different, but making them sort of reach a certain level in certain areas before allowing something else as almost a reward. Is that a good strategy, or is that sort of a bit weird?
No, I think there is a place for yes when. So, for example, your kid comes home and they want to play with the kids in the street. They want to go and scooter. Yes, when you've put away the Lego that you were playing with before. And I think it can also play into high school, I want to do this, this, and this. Push it back on them. Okay, show me how you're going to have time for your homework.
Nice.
Helping out around the house. What's your strategy? So we kind of lean into problem solving with our teens around being ready, rather than just going yes and knowing all of those things are going to go by the wayside.
With the danger of opening up a whole nother conversation that maybe we could have another time, how much should parents share with their kids about the financial side of the extracurricular stuff? Because kids want to do everything, right? And it all starts adding up with uniforms and those sorts of things.
That's a good question.
But trying to not obviously burden your kids with the reality of financial stuff before they need to in life. That's not really their responsibility. But then also trying to let them have an awareness of all of that stuff at the same time without them feeling like they're a burden or something. How do you sort of balance that?
So everything's a balancing act, right? So we want adult problems to be adult problems. So we're not going to get out our spreadsheet of, do you know what it costs? But it might be that we decide as a family, here's our budget for extracurricular. And I love that idea of getting your kids involved. Okay, we've got this amount of money. So how much does soccer cost? How much does swimming cost? What can we do? Anything that kind of helps our kids learn about money, being responsible with it, is not a bad idea.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, that's quite good. Compartmentalising without the full spreadsheet coming out.